Hi, good evening. Welcome to Tux TV. I am your host, Jimmy Tux, and I have a window somewhere playing Duplicate. I don't know where, though. There's no place playing. This is why I never have nice things. All right. There it is. Found it. Call off the search. Okay. I'm back. Okay. So, welcome to part 2. This is a Evil So Evil, the Catholic Thinks It's Good. Part 2. Basically, we're going to go over a little bit of a recap from part 1. I had had this cute representative just sitting in the back of Mom's minivan or in very soccer style, ready to go about a question. Seems like it should be easy to answer, so I answered it.
If Adam and Eve were the first people on Earth, how did slavery start?
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Wait a minute. So, how did slavery start? So we went over, as a quick recap, it started where just after Adam and Eve are in the garden, they get cursed and they get booted out of the garden. The next story is about two brothers, and one of them ends up dead, and the other one ends up cursed. And then there is a requirement for all these cursed people to be removed from the face of the earth. And so God finds the most righteous and drowns everybody else except for Noah and his family. And then Noah and his family, you know, we're definitely not going to repeat the problem that we had the first time. So instead, we're going to...
And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant, which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah...
So he's got a covenant between Noah and all flesh upon the earth. So what does he do with this new covenant? Do you think he's going to curse people again and get into the same situation that he did before? Or do you think he's ready to start anew?
that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine, and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent.
Okay, so we survived the flood, have a little tasty drinky poo, and then we get wasted.
And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. His wine, and knew what his younger son had, and he said, Cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren.
Okay, so that didn't take very long. Somehow, Dad's drunk. Ham does something. We're not even sure what. Whatever it is, it now makes him the servant of servants to his brothers. So, we go through the same thing that we had before. Curses. It's almost like Oprah giving away cars. You get a car. You get a car. You get a car. No, God is going to hand them out like curses. You get a curse. You get a curse. You know what? This is a disaster. I'm going to create a big fat disaster, and I'm going to wipe out this other disaster that I made, and I'm going to start afresh anew. I'm certainly not going to first time, except Noah makes the same mistake that God made the first time. So, I'm sorry, Gurr. I'm sorry. But there's good news. If I do an ASMR, I might be able to get you to go to sleep. I'm going to tell Bible stories about how indebted servitude started in the Bible.
And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant.
That's amazing. Okay, so how does this really affect life as we know it in the Christian faith? Do we see Christians using this as a combative measure of essentially programming your brain from the very beginning, of being a part of Christianity? Is it anywhere a mental conditioning of indebted servitude to brethren? Let's see what Andrew Womack has to say.
When all you do is think and talk in your understanding, it's easy to shut off the Spirit and not follow the leading of the Spirit. But when you start speaking in tongues, it makes no sense to your brain. And for you to continue to pray in tongues, you have to kind of, in a sense, unplug from the natural realm. You have to not turn your brain off, but submit your brain to the Spirit and get to where you are letting the Spirit have the ascendancy, having the control, dominance over you. This is one of the reasons that speaking in tongues builds you up, is because it focuses your attention on the spiritual realm. It gets you out of the natural realm.
Isn't that amazing? Oh, that just cracks me up. Don't worry, it gets better.
Dysfunction's normal. Abuse is normal. Divorce is
This
normal.
This is the same ministry group, and Andrew Womack's the main minister on it, and she is Carrie here. She is a big part of the broadcast team as well.
Normal. You're telling you that all of that stuff is normal. Therefore, because it's normal, you have to live in it. Absolutely not. We're new creations in Christ Jesus. That stuff is not who we are. It's not normal for us anymore. Like, no. Everybody else may say that that's how I should be treated. But I'm a new creation, so there's a whole other level that I will and will not allow. That's what's amazing, because identity in Christ draws boundaries.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Okay, so like there's no chance that she is asking you to live in a world that is normal, that is natural, and that you know, the case that I made in part one is that there is a net, a mesh that is enveloped around you, and you are now caught in the direction that net is pulling you. Someday you're going to be pulled up to the surface, but right now you're just going to be kept in the water, alive, as the fishers of men have caught you. That there is a fruit out there that is the knowledge of good and evil, and in that fruit is a baited hook. And you taste the fruit, it's delicious. Little did you know that there's a hook, and it's now torn into your lip, and somebody's got a rod and reel, and they're just spinning you around, and you're fighting it. They're going to pull you out of the water. Human beings are treated in the last two videos in this capacity of your abated fish. You thought you were getting some delicious fruit? But no, you got much more than that. And when you read the Bible, a fruit that causes cursings, is that normal? Is floods that drown you and kill everybody, is that normal? This is the Abrahamic world that is created. is forcing your youngest son to be an indebted servant to your brothers, servant of servants, to your two brothers. Is that normal? Genesis 1 through 9. And if you don't live this way as Genesis 1 through 9 is, the mental psychology that every single Christian preacher brings to the table tells you how to be, that is there. And I think we're better off without the Bible as a result. So, the evil so evil that the Christian thinks it's good, pride, to me, is a single clip that we're going to see. That the mental conditioning is already there, fishers of men and catfishing, all linked together. The difference is the net isn't visible. It is affecting the neural firings in your head. It is affecting the way you think, the way you have expectations that being enslaved to your tool. Bad. It ain't so bad.
It's been my biggest seller. Who doesn't like attention and feeling more important than the next person? Once I make them famous, I can really use them to promote my agenda. With their help, I've convinced half of the world to not only accept sin, but to celebrate it. Do you know what has been my most enjoyable campaign to date?
No, what?
Of course. Not only do I get the chance to promote your own self-destruction, I get to use God's logo, the rainbow, to do it. Love is love, right?
Yeah. So, if the pride is living, blood is destruction. Genesis 1 through 9 is a celebration of destruction. Indebted servitude. Cursings. That's what Christian rainbow means. I think this is summed up best by Hitchens in Hitchens versus Hitchens.
Would I suppose be the gravamen of my case. Some people I know who are atheists will say they wish they could believe it. Some people I know who are former believers say they wish they could have their old faith back. They miss it. I don't understand this at all. I think it's an excellent thing that there's no reason to believe in the absurd propositions I just, admittedly rather briefly, rehearsed to you. The main reason for this, I think, is that it is a totalitarian belief. It is the wish to be a slave. It is the desire that there be an unalterable, unchallengeable, tyrannical authority who can convict you of thought crime while you are asleep, who can subject you, who must indeed subject you, to a total surveillance around the clock, every waking and sleeping minute of your life, I say of your life, before you're born, and even worse, and where the real fun begins, after you're dead. A celestial North Korea. Who wants this to be true? Who but a slave desires such a ghastly fate? I've been to North Korea. It has a dead man as its president. Kim Jong-il is only head of the party and head of the army. He's not head of the government or the state. That office belongs to his deceased father, Kim Il-sung. It's a necrocracy. A thanatocracy. It's one short of a trinity, I might add. The son is the reincarnation of the father. It is the most revolting and utter and absolute and heartless tyranny the human species has ever evolved. But at least the father has to show his God that he's at least willing to do it. That his submission can be taken for granted, even to this extent. Is there anyone here who does not think that that is the grandeur of the story, as well as what I would describe as the horrible sadomasochistic submission? Only then, only when he's shown, yes, I will do it, that's how much I love Big Brother, only then is he released from the obligation. This is the torturing. This is even worse than the book of Job. It's even worse than the toying by the dictator of the fate and emotions of one of his effortlessly made creatures. Anyone who loves this loves to be a slave. Now, on the point of morality, my brother has written very well in England and indeed elsewhere about the awful nihilism and relativism that has poisoned so much of our social and national and collective life. And I have more agreement with him on this than perhaps he understands, but to say that this is to be equated, heresy trials, witch hunts, miraculous discoveries such as Lysenko's biology, the worship of the leader from whom all blessings flow, as I described North Korea, the most religious state I've ever seen. Mutatis mutandis, this would apply also to Mao's China, with the same background of superstition and servility. Now, for there to be a fair test about this, you'd have to do the following. And no one I've ever debated with has even tried it. So you be the first. You find me a state or a society that threw off theocracy and threw off religion and said we adopt the teachings of Lucretius and Democritus and Galileo and Spinoza and Darwin and Russell and Jefferson and Thomas Paine. And we make those what we teach our children. We make that scientific and rational humanism our teaching. And you find me that state that did that and fell into tyranny and slavery and famine and torture, and then we'll be on a level playing field. As it is, all you've done is show that the idea of worship and the idea of credulity and the idea of servility and slavery to religion is a bad idea in the first place.
But none of this.
All right. I think that is a great summarization of everything I've said. The difference is I've brought out of the Holy Book, the foundation of the Holy Book, the incompetence of this being. And it looks like there's the grubby handprints and fingerprints of human beings who know how to weave a story, tell a story, and that story is deception at its core.
As if people who are pushing this radical ideology are friendable or something. I think we're still under this illusion that the people who are pushing this agenda would cozy up to us if we just said enough that we love you, we personally think, and I don't think we should be doing that. I think the primary meaning of Pride Month and of the Pride flag is that the behaviors and larger worldview behind them are morally acceptable, if not morally praiseworthy. And that's just not true. They're not. That runs in direct opposition to what the Catechism of the Catholic Church clearly states, and even though you just told me to take my glasses off, I need to do this to read it. Here's what it says. Basing itself on sacred scripture, which presents homosexual acts as grave depravity, tradition has always declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. They are contrary to the natural law. They close the sexual act, the gift of life. They do not proceed from a genuine, effective, and sexual complementarity. Under no circumstance can they be approved. I would recommend Trent Horn's podcast. I think he did it last week or the week about the hypocrisy of Pride Month or Pride flags. To me, there's an analogy to the Playboy bunny. I saw someone the other day wearing the Playboy bunny. And if I had gotten into a conversation with him, he was just a random person on the street, I would have suggested that he never wear that hat again. Because even if he personally wasn't wearing that Playboy bunny to promote pornography and the worldview that would support pornography, that is in fact what he is doing. And so what he should do, if he's a Christian man at least, is take that hat, set it on fire, and never wear it again. And I think the Pride flag and Pride Month is similar there. So go check out Trent's episode on that. We had an excellent episode with Kim Zemba the other day about those either in that lifestyle or those struggling.
All right. I'm going to go to Dan MacLeod. Now, I'm bringing up Dan here because he's going to make a couple of points. And this just goes to show you that the Christian, the Catholic, does not need to attack the Pride Month. They can find plenty of verses, if they chose, that support the gay trans movement, the gay trans acceptability, especially when we know that there are children that are born intersexed, that there are children that aren't directly male and directly female, that there can be a combination, be a lean, that they're known. And as we stated in part 1, it immediately debunks that we were woven in the womb by an omni anything. It immediately debunks that he created them male and female. Automatically.
Hey everybody, I want to talk briefly about those passages in the Bible that condemn acts of same-sex intercourse. To begin, I don't think there's a strong case to make that they're actually condemning pedophilia or cultic prostitution or sexual assault or anything like that. The data just don't support those readings, but I can understand their impetus because there are a lot of folks out there, particularly conservative Christians, who would deploy these passages for discriminatory, for hateful, for harmful purposes, and that just has to stop. It's unacceptable. And there are two reasons that the folks who would deploy those passages, those purposes, do not have a strong case to make. The Bible is negotiable. You may not like that, and you're welcome to not like it as much as you want. It's simply the reality. Everyone who has ever deployed the Bible authoritatively has had to negotiate with it. You negotiated with slavery. You negotiated with polygamy. Many of you have negotiated with misogyny. But no one living or dead has ever even understood all of the Bible's original authoritative intent, much less lived by it. And the second reason is that we don't know precisely what those prohibitions were or what their rationales and motivations were precisely. To the degree we can reconstruct those things, their rationales seem utterly irrelevant to a 21st century understanding of homosexuality as a sexual orientation.
So I'm going to come back to this again, but and continue with the dance. But when you count up that station of, for instance, the late John 7, early John 8, woman caught in adultery. Like the minute you have somebody in a 10 commandment violation and the line is drawn in the sand by Jesus, there is nothing that's explicitly stated by Jesus that overturns that, in my opinion. There's nothing. Like, you can use some vague reference, but there's no laid out contract here. It's not like all parties are in agreement and understand it. It's not like Jesus came down and wrote this stuff for himself. All of it appears to be somebody who's piggybacking off of an older version of mentally conditioning you into servant of servants. And the Holy Bible does that over and over again. You see this ebb and flow. Ebb and flow. You'll get the word, just like Genesis 1 through 11 is, in which you're mentally conditioned to accept these things. And then you get some stories about the power that are inflicted upon those who either don't do what they're doing, the reward you get if you do what you're doing, the loves and sonnets that are sung and written about in poetry for those who are in love with the ideals of having been a part of this invisible monarchy. And you see that cycle over and over again. So when the kind of things,
he threaded that needle really well, but that doesn't mean there isn't a space for people to speak more forcefully about the evil agenda that is being pushed on us. In fact, we had lunch.
The evil agenda Christians use and call it good.
With Kim immediately after the episode, and she said, for the first time, got to watch Matt Walsh's What is a Woman for a few days, and she said she loved it. So this idea that you can't be compassionate to those who are living a particular lifestyle while calling out the sin that it is, I think the people who are doing this, and if you want to see it, go to my Instagram page, go to my Facebook page. Whenever I post something like this, whenever Catholics get very upset, it seems to me that they are sacrificing truth on the altar of politeness. They just want to be nice. They just want to be left alone by the culture. They want to make friends as opposed to confronting the evil for what it is. And so we've got really good reasons to think that I think even on a natural level here in the United States, maybe in your country, you'll have to let me know below in the comments, we've got really good reason to think that the tide is turning. And I've got several articles here that show this. We mentioned this the other day, but I think it's really cool. Middle schoolers accused of homophobia after chanting USA, tearing down operations. Now, the point isn't the USA, America, for all I care. But the point of this was that they were tired of having this gay propaganda pushed on them such that they kind of revolted, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm kind of tired of the Christian propaganda being kind of pointed in a direction, especially towards Washington. You know, the number of Christian flags during the acts of sedition, and specifically the person who had a bullhorn wearing some sort of horned fur, I don't know, part prayer shawl, part headdress, part bikini, mankini, whatever it was. Him saying a prayer on the floor is the final straw for me. This is your Christian values on full display. Is whatever that equivalency to cross-dressing with a buffalo, I think. That's being pushed on us by force, in violation of a constitution that protects both you and I from not just your religion, but any other religions you don't agree with. It protects me from religions. It protects me from believing in none of those religions. So when I see anyone who says this, I think Christian, heal thyself. Your evil has gotten to the point where it's seen way too much as good.
And I know this from talking to younger generations, like my kids and their friends. These kids are sick of being preached at. And so I think we've got really good reason to think that next June, the LGBTQ whatever stuff that's getting pushed, even from big corporations, is going to die down significantly because people are sick and tired of it.
Inflate them up.
So that's one example.
Inflate them up.
Here's another example. This is from the New York Post. Target stock loses
took it on the chin. That's for sure.
Lowest level. Cheap discount clothing. $30. 60.4. These are for infants that say,
yeah, so
TV now, unless my
Target thing recently, or we did a clip and I was
editing
editing
they
it,
got
right?
caught.
And you guys were mentioning that
I forget. I'm not sure if it's here or not, but they get caught.
Daily Mail.
They get
Daily
caught.
Mail?
I mean, okay. It says the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball team is facing a Bud Light style boycott after a controversial LG whatever salad group of drag queens,
can't even say
nuns,
it right,
to a night ceremony enraging the Catholic community and sparking protests on Friday. The group, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, they need an exorcism in that place, was invited to appear before the Dodgers game against the San Francisco Giants and receive an award for their community work. Here's the good news. The ceremony to award the Community Hero Award, how despicable, was held before an almost empty stadium ahead of the game. But outside, the protesters gathered. So there was a larger group outside of the stadium than was inside. The group's appearance at Friday's ball game at a time when brands such as Bud Light and Target have faced backlash from the far right, or just like, how about the sane? How about this is the sane, normal people who don't think we should be pushing evil on people or displaying it or celebrating it or offering awards for it, for stocking items that extol equal rights. All this language.
Yeah, my internet has been crap today. I don't know what to do. Let me test my stream real quick. Oh, it is bad. Well, I can't do anything. I think it's the heat, but I don't know. I think it was you. I do think it was you. So he mentioned that, and I just want to show you, he's kind of making a mountain out of a molehill, but Dodger Stadium is synonymous for not filling up until the third inning. So I think this is the night of the game or one similar to it.
Things are very different today.
But I don't know if you can see this. Let me put this full screen. But this is Dodger Stadium. And you can see in this area right here that it's empty. It's almost empty here. There's a lot of spaces that are empty here. And you're going to see
they are very confident that
right before first pitch.
He's just looking for Noah to have command and to attack the strike.
You can see it's empty here. There's lots of seats, at least on my screen.
To score a very free sponsorship if it goes well here tonight.
And you can see quite a few seats that are empty. Upper deck almost has nothing in it. All right, these aren't the cheap seats. These are the luxury box seats right here. Look at how many of those are empty. First pitch is 20 seconds away. This gives you an idea of how the crowd at Dodger Stadium fill in. They don't show up on time. You show up to most of the time, especially if the Cubs are in contention. You show up to a Cubs game, you're usually there by the time, in time, in the ballpark. Found your seat. You might not be at your seat for first pitch. If you've never been to a ball game, a lot of times there's a ceremonial stuff. Then there's a ceremonial first pitch. Then there's some sort of congratulatory. They sing "God Bless America" at the Cubs because they sing at the seventh inning stretch. They say "Take me out to the ball game." So they sing "God Bless America" about 20 minutes before the game starts. Then they sing the national anthem about 2 or 3 minutes before the game starts, and then the game starts.
The Twins, and it's an old friend to lead it off in Joey Gallo.
So, telling us there were more people outside the stadium than there were inside the stadium, that is an accurate statement, but it's a misrepresentation of the facts.
A socially constructed hierarchy of domination and penetrability, not on contemporary understandings of sexual orientation.
Domination and penetrability. Easy for me to say. So, to say that heterosexual sex is the only thing that should matter, there were things that were different then. And to compare them to a modern day interpretation is disingenuous. Just like Pints here just stated that there were more people outside the stadium than there were inside the stadium. You can say that it's true, but it's not a good representation of the facts. All right, I want to go to reason and theology.
Flag is literally everywhere. I can walk down the centre of London right now, and it's all the way down the main street on Regent Street. We don't see the nation's flag anymore. We see the trans pride flag, the trans progress flag, whatever they want to call it. It is wicked, again, because it's an affront on the very idea of what it means to be a human. But
so I brought this up. It's an affront to what it means to be a human. So to be in a situation where you just don't feel like your inside parts man, shouldn't be up to these priests to pretend. Especially people that I see as having essentially been mentally conditioned to accept indebted servitude from their supernatural, invisible hero.
Pride, a month to celebrate Pride. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. They couldn't be more on the nose with this stuff. And June, of all things, for a Catholic, that is the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus Christ. It's the month
7 deadly sins.
Where we celebrate his love for us and our love for him.
Pride is the worst one, according to them.
To break all of that down and instead celebrate a sin, the most devious of sins, because it's the sin that we fall into the most commonly. There's no other way to describe it.
Most commonly, as far as I can tell, Genesis 1 through 11, the most common sin is from God, and that is the cursing instead of teaching. As far as I can tell, That is a blatant. You can crumple up all the 7 sins all you want. A person that curses, a human being, an omni anything that curses a human being, instead of teaching, a perfect opportunity to teach. No, little Jimmy, don't touch that bright red burner. It will burn your finger. And I touched that bright red burner because that glow was so hypnotic. And I burnt my finger. Screamed all bloody murder. That they tossed me out of the house and never let me come back. No. When I told you not to touch that bad things would happen, bad thing happened. I hope you learned your lesson. Don't do that again. Because it could hurt a lot worse than what you've just got. Here, we're going to put some ice on it, and then we're going to blow on it. We'll kiss the boo-boo and make it feel better. Is that the sign of a good God? Because that's what my parents did with me. Because when you don't teach properly, murder happens. More cursings happen. You have to murder everybody then. And more murder. To the point where there's just a few remaining. You mean to tell me omni everything answer should be curse? Let's do a good comparison. Be honest. The Catholic member, be honest. Is pride really all that bad? Compared to Genesis 3's cursing, Genesis 4's cursing, Genesis 9's indebted servitude. It's not even close. It's not even close.
But wicked. That's what this all is. It's an attack on our God.
And of course, related to this, as
Mike Lofton. Mike Lofton does have a nice haircut.
Christians to accept this concept of gay marriage. And in fact, there are many people who claim to be Christians who accept this and believe it's perfectly reconcilable somehow with sacred scripture and with God's will. What would you say to such people? Why would you say Christianity absolutely is antithetical to this concept of gay marriage and it can't be included and digested into Christian thought?
It's strange. The idea that someone would identify as gay and Christian, it's an oxymoron. Like, you can identify as Christian or identify as gay. That's not to say that there aren't same-sex attracted Christians. Of course there are. But
right.
The two don't go together. To live a Christ-like life, as we're all called to do, we're called to be celibate outside of marriage. Some people are called to marriage. That's fantastic. Some people aren't. They are called to be celibate. There are only two callings that are natural and holy and good. Anything else is what God describes in the Bible as abhorrent, because it's disorderly. It's against his order. It's not as he's perceived.
It's 7 deadly sin. We can just pass this off. And that's abhorrent.
To be good. Therefore, it is sinful. It is the separation of ourselves from him. So marriage cannot be, gay marriage. Again, that's an oxymoron because the word marriage means something.
You know what it means? You go down to the county and you file for a certificate. That's what it means. You don't need to go to a church. I got married on a beach. You don't need marriage to be biblical. That's made up.
Words used to mean something. Marriage means a union of two people, one man and one woman, for life, coming together forever in one flesh, for the purposes of procreation, for the purposes of starting a family, for the purposes of the wider community and themselves, and for the purposes of worshipping God. It's very, very straightforward. We all knew what it meant until 5 minutes ago. So the idea that it could be redefined into something else is silly.
Yeah, you point out here something that I've noticed as well, and again, many others have too, and that is the redefinition of terms. You said that words actually used to mean something, and now people are redefining terms. They redefine terms like what love is, or what inclusive means, or as you kind of mentioned earlier, what is a woman or what is a man. These things are all redefined, and you'll notice the common thing behind them is they're redefined to mean whatever I feel. If I feel that I'm a woman, then I'm a woman. That's how we redefine terms now.
Let's go back to Dan.
World world of Paul's day tried to compartmentalize and rationalize different aspects of human sexuality, because men who sought out an active role in an active male same-sex intercourse, that was considered more or less natural. Men were walking around with hammers looking for anything that looked like a nail, and so you just had to restrain it for the sake of social implications in many circumstances. Men who were looking for a passive role in an active male same-sex intercourse, who were always considered distinct from the first group, there was no overlap, they had no versatile role back then, those men were understood to be motivated by completely different and usually pathological motivations. Something was misfiring, so that was considered less socially acceptable. It was primarily younger men and boys and slaves and things like that that were supposed to be put in that submissive position, not necessarily against their will, but certainly not in accordance with their will. Now, women, because they were lower on that hierarchy of domination and penetrability, didn't fit into either of those rationalizations, so they had a completely different rationalization for them, because they were just trying to situate all these different activities on this hierarchy of domination and penetrability. So if we look at Paul, we see...
So, let's go back to...
cyclical. Love is love. Yeah, but what does love mean? Like, what does it mean to be a woman? Well, to feel like a woman. Yeah, but what is a woman? What is he feeling like? They can never answer these things because it's on purpose, isn't it? They know what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're taking something.
They can be answered. It can be answered from somebody who doesn't feel that they are trapped in a net, catfished by your Catholicism. We can answer it. It's called life. It's called the atheist is doing a better job of following the tree of life than anyone who's followed this baited hook, the fruit of knowledge of good and evil.
And twisting it, much like the rainbow. It's the sign of God's covenant between him and us, and they take that and they strip a color off.
Yeah,
and
we already saw. Genesis 9, that covenant was broken the minute that Ham is now servant of servants to his two brothers.
Demonize it and put it out there to mean something about sexuality and degeneracy and debauchery and indecency in the public square, with people thrusting with this rainbow wrapped around themselves and being half naked in front of children, if not fully naked. Just practicing.
I don't know. They've done it in front.
Their wicked ways, openly celebrating sin.
The greater sin has already been demonstrated in Genesis 1 through 11. And it's the supreme supernatural hero that you worship.
It's like, please strike me down. That's what they're saying.
Isn't this a theme that we see often with Satan? As you mentioned, they're taking the rainbow, using a good sign, a sign of the covenant with Noah, and then turning it for something evil. That's the same theme that we see in sacred scripture with Satan, who tries to mimic God.
Yeah, I don't think there's an invisible boogeyman, just like I don't think there's an invisible superhero.
But does it in a reversed way.
Yeah, of course. So people often paint Satan as a liar, but he doesn't actually outright lie. He takes the truth and twists the truth because it's far more powerful, because people latch onto it and think, well, yeah, that seems right to me, because it's almost right, but it's never fully right. And
wouldn't that be a good description of Genesis 1 through 11? Like the whole thing. Yeah, it sounds right. It sounds like we have this. Like at what point do you ask for any tangible evidence for Genesis 1 through 11's truthfulness? To me, it looks like a story in which it is designed to entrap you in that net, ensnare you on a hook, to catfish you into being accepting of the mindset of cursings and servant of servants.
That's why it's so dangerous. A half-truth is much more dangerous than a lie. And we see this with the growth of Islam as an example. The oldest, well, not the oldest, but the most, the fastest growing and the most powerful Catholic heresy.
Speaking of Islam, I've heard you talk about, I think, a double standard that we see between Christianity and Islam. It seems like society wants to constantly attack Christianity, and especially wants the Bible to be to accommodate the gay or progressive agenda. Whereas you don't necessarily see that with the progressives in relation to the Quran. I haven't really heard them engage the Quran a whole lot or try to see it accommodate culture. Do you think that there's a double standard here?
Getting into very dangerous water. I'm going to ask St. Michael to bless me on this topic, because this is a topic that I'm very...
Michael's going to bless us. Yay! Yay.
I'm still nervous about this topic. There's a great evil surrounding this cult of Islam that has grown.
It's a great evil. Isn't that amazing? You know, you could probably get rid of that evil by getting rid of Christianity. Let's save the rest for part 3. I'm going to play just a touch more of Dan.
See no rejection of that social hierarchy of domination and penetrability, because Paul reinscribes both of those things in his sexual ethic. However, he rejects any natural motivations for any homosexual activity. He needs that to be entirely deviant, a rejection of the natural order. And so he comes up with this idea that homosexual activity is the result of God removing the restraints that were placed upon human sexuality as a result of the Gentiles refusing to honor God as creator, causing those passions to boil over and result in all these unnatural sexual acts. Because for Paul, to the degree that we can refer to a sexual orientation, Paul thought everybody was a heterosexual, and that sexual activity was this result of God. But most folks have already negotiated away the majority of Paul's sexual ethic. Paul thought everyone should be celibate because he was celibate, and so he was reasoning why that was the best course of action. Said that sex was really only useful within marriage to make you want to have sex less and procreate.
So basically he's going to go on to state that Paul, in my opinion, was a and that he wanted everybody to start their family and go have some babies because Jesus was going to be back any minute. We've gone 49 minutes. I wanted to go 45, so I think this is a good time to end it. I'm going to conclude that, to me, that these folks right here, to me, those folks right there are a touch of Christian good that is evil. An evil so evil that they want you to enjoy your free gift of salvation. Come and get it. Free gift of salvation with bloody Jesus. That's right. For God so loved the world, he gave. He gave. Gave means bloody Jesus. And if God were actually good, if God were actually a teacher, he would have come down, clarified things, and hugged his son. Because bloody Jesus is an evil so evil. It's seen as good. I would just like to close just by saying that, to me, there's an ugly mind behind Catholicism. And pride exemplifies that. In part 3, we're going to go into why I think many of the Christian nation, especially the Jehovah's Witness, Southern Baptists, and Catholics, have had so much sexual assault over the last few decades that has come to a pinpoint in our court systems. The realization that this stuff had been stymied, it was a breeding ground for pedophilia, and this that we're seeing now, the moment in which the piper Evil so evil. Evil so evil. Here's a moment of Zen. This is thank to Captain Desk, by the way. Dave. Bowtie bless.